Okay, great. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. I am so happy to have this edible talk today with Chef Debra Sardinha. We are going to talk, as you know, about a taste of Trinidad and Tobago, which is an event we're having this Saturday, the 25th of February, to take a little stroll through the amazing gastronomy that is Trinidad. But before we start, I would very much like for Debra to introduce herself to us and tell us a little bit about how she came to be a chef.
Well, good morning to you, or good afternoon, as you said. It's a pleasure to be on your program, Vicki. Yes, I've been a chef for, I would say, at least half of my life. So that's a long time. I started off with just knowing actually that I loved cooking. So I started off with being in an environment of cooking with, I would say, mom and dad in the kitchen. And it just grew because we are a family that always entertained, and food was always that staple that brought the family together. You know, a big Sunday breakfast after market or a celebration. And both of my parents have large siblings. There's a large group, so cousins and uncles and aunts. You know, it's always food. Always for me was married with joy and happiness and good flavors. So I guess it's inevitable that some of that would have rubbed off, as we say. And I just knew that food. No, I didn't know I was going to be a chef, but I just knew that I was going to do something in food.
Excellent. And so did you acquire any specific training then to pursue this?
Actually, yes, I went to New York City Technical College and I got a bachelor's degree in hotel and restaurant management, and did the gamut of working hard with various chefs in New York City and in the Caribbean and across the globe. I have had the luxury of traveling around the globe to promote our cuisine, to represent the island, to judge at the Taste of Caribbean, and yada, yada, yada. It goes on and on and on. So there have been many wonderful experiences that come out from cooking in terms of Trinbago cuisine.
Very, very interesting. And as you mentioned that you've been around the globe, I would like to ask you first off, if you wanted to give somebody who did not know Trinidad at all a taste of Trinidad and Tobago, what might you offer them to eat?
Well, you know, our food, it's so multi-layered. I mean, they are the traditional dishes, of course. Curry has its staple in that mix, and again, there are many different, you know, whether it be a curried shrimp or a curried goat. With that could be a side of like a mango tal curry or a good chutney or a mother-in-law pepper. That in of itself is so layered and so bursting with flavors. And yes, there's the Scotch bonnet or the scorpion pepper that gives the heat, but the dishes in of itself doesn't necessarily require that heat. That's an additional add-on if you want the spice, but all of those components can stand on its own. And then we go to another side of our cuisine, which is the traditional stews and the slow cooking process of allowing those, I would say, those harder cuts of beef and meat to really take its time and break down those connective tissues so that we get, again, a different level of bursting of flavors, whether it be with our green seasoning and a little ginger and a little pimento. Those are some really unique flavors. And I think both of those will be the mainstay. And then we add on the little add-ons of whether it be a little bit of Chinese cuisine, a little bit of the Syrian Lebanese cuisine. We have some Spanish influence. It's very, very mixed and diverse, but then it's also very unique in that every single cuisine can stand on its own.
Well, that is fascinating. And, you know, as I was preparing to talk to you, it's true. I was thinking about oxtail, pigtail, cowfoot. And I said, these are the parts of the animal that, you know, Western societies in the North generally rejects. And we have turned them into something so delicious, as you say, the slow cooking part of that. So
Correct. I think it also came from, realities. If you look at history of food, everything comes back to a tradition, but the tradition is based on, I would say, our tanti, our grandmothers, all of those women who had large families, and they thought of, how do I make this work? If this is what I'm given, if I'm given, as we say in the industry, these underutilized cuts, these cuts that people want to throw away, the offals and all of the things that were not considered premium, have now found themselves on the chef's table in terms of getting very creative with them. But it started off with taking these things, these different cuts of beef, as you said, the oxtail and the pigtail. I mean, you cook with pigtail in different forms, and between the salt and the flavor, you didn't really need much meat, because it was able to take that dish and those flavors stretched in the rice. And every time you took a spoonful of rice, you're tasting that flavor or that stock base of that pigtail. So it's yum, 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 all the time. And it was getting creative. If I have 10 mouths to feed or 12 mouths to feed, and in those days, it was big families. How do I work on a budget and still create something like okra and rice with pigtail? I'm sure it was a convenient way of taking that and making it tasty, so that everybody got a little taste of that beef or that umami kind of flavor coming through. And it's homage to those women who understood the traditions and I think as a chef as well, one of the things we're called to do is respect the ingredients that we use and understand the best way of utilizing them. So while you want a little bit of fusion, you want it to be done in a way where you don't lose the essence of the product that you're working with.
Do you want to explain for the audience umami? I don't know if everybody will understand that term, but it's an important term.
It's a layering where I guess the best way of describing it would be like a mushroom or a soy sauce, that type of flavor profile. It kind of brings in or rounds off the dish. It just takes it up a notch. It kind of finishes off that dish, almost like I want to say a meaty flavor that satisfies the palate, the tongue. So for me, like I said, taking sometimes when you cook with mushrooms, you will get that flavor where mushroom is not a meat item, but you almost feel as if with that flavor you are getting meat. It's not meat, but you're getting that rounded flavor. And I think that would be the best way to describe that umami kind of on your tongue taste.
I had mentioned to you that one of your colleagues, Jason Peru, quoting David Hoffman, the food blogger, said he was so surprised by Trinidad. He said that the food has personality and vitality. And I found those, two words that are very unusual to describe food. And what are your thoughts about the personality and vitality?
It rings true to culture. It's like we just finished Carnival, and the layering and the energy and the vibes of the people on the street. Our food is like that. It's full, it's bursting. And again, the first thing that people tend to think of when they think of Caribbean food is, oh my gosh, the heat. But actually, that is an add-on, I always say, because it's the pepper sauces that will give that, or if you actually cook with a hot pepper. But you don't need to do that. Our food is so rich in flavor and layered in flavors that you're almost taken aback. If you ate, let's say, for instance, sauce, right? Which would be, for those who may not know what sauce is, it's pig trotters that are slowly cooked till tender. And then you're gonna clean it up, and you're gonna make a jus with some of that stock, with fresh lime and parsley and onions and a little bit of flavoring pepper and a little hot pepper. And you may look at it and think, okay, it's pig trotters, I'll try it. But when you bite into it and you get the balance of the little acidity and the little spice notes and the tenderness of the trotter itself, you're blown away that this simple dish has so much in it, the layering. And this, what I love about our food is that traditionally, it's just like Italy, but certain, pasta stands own. Our food in its traditional form, doubles, it stands on its own. It doesn't need anything else. It is what it is. And I think sometimes, I know that there's fusion happening out there. I know that we want to take some of our elements to a different level, and I'm all about that. But I also think that we need to respect the traditions, understand them, embrace them, and showcase to the world this is a little bit of who we are, and this is where we came from, and this is where we're going. Because pasta will always be pasta.
Yes.
And that's the bottom.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I was in Slow Food and I saw the people, they started making flour from chestnuts. And that will bring me to this point of asking you about our tubers, the things that we grow here, like cassava and sweet potato, edos, dasheen, all of these things, and the effort to change them into flour and to substitute them for the traditional wheat flour. In your experience as a chef, how do these new flours compare with what most?
Well, the thing about the traditional pasta has durum wheat in it, which gives a certain level of body. It's a protein that will give a certain structure to the pasta. It gives you that al dente bite. In our local, I would say the flours of the dasheen and the cassava, it's a starchier tuber. You're not going to get that. So it's finding the balance of finding the right application, because like a plantain flour or the dasheen flour, the cassava flour, it handles differently, and the structure of as it's so starchy, it's I know it works well in baking and in cakes. We've done the Blue Food Festival in Tobago, for example, and in judging that, where a lot of people have brought together even the simple black fruit cake. I remember tasting from a lady, or a granny, so to speak. She did it. She used the dasheen flour and made a wonderful black fruit traditional cake, and it worked beautifully in the application. So it's finding the balance. There are certain things that it works very well in, but in order to get the structure, you would probably have to add a little protein back into that so that you get that structure that is required, for example, for a pasta dish.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Tell me, Chef Debra, how are you experiencing Trinidadian and Tobagonians' own taste preferences? We have so much fast food coming in. It has its detractors for sure, but the question is, where are the taste buds? Where do you think the taste buds of Trinidadians and Tobagonians are for local food?
I think there's still, the masses, so to speak, because when you look at the range of let's say lunch items then that are offered, you still go back to, if you go to any, if you go into the malls, for example, and you look on the hot steam tables, you're still seeing the traditional things like the macaroni pie, the pilau. And for those of you who don't know what pilau is, it's a chicken rice dish with pigeon peas. You'll still see the callaloo, the ground provision, the fish, the fried fish, or the stewed chicken. Those things, I think, still very much resonate and are layered and a staple in the diet. They're not going anywhere. But you do have, as you said, where there is a competition for fast food because of the convenience of fast food. And I would say traditionally, we're on a Sunday of all days. That was a day that you cooked a complete meal, because it also brought families together. It was a process of looking forward to this Sunday lunch as we know it. I would dare say that a lot of that is not done anymore. For the convenience on a Sunday, you would see a lineup outside the fast food drive-in where people are literally taking a bucket and going to the beach. But normally that would not be the case. The woman would get up very early in the morning and prepare, and by 10 o'clock, her lunch was completed. It was cooked. And if you were going to the beach, she'd pack a little basket, or you came back and you had that traditional food. And that has changed. The dynamics of how we eat has changed. Fast food has definitely entered into the equation. But I think there's still quite a bit of people that go for what I would say our traditional Creole food.
Yes, that's the term Creole is really that is in a way a precursor to fusion, isn't it? The idea of Creole food. Let me ask you one final question before I give you the last word. I was reading something earlier today, and they talked about culinary health. And a new field there where people are cooking to help people become healthier. Do you have any thoughts on that, or do you know anything about that?
I would say, while I'm not familiar with the term culinary health, but I would say my style of cooking has always been with that in mind, in the sense of, for example, when we stew chicken, we don't put any oil. We allow the sugar to caramelize itself, and then we add our meats to brown. There's no need for the oil. And I always feel in cooking where I can cut back on excess fat and I guess substitute it with as natural ingredients as I can. We don't use powdered stuff. Everything comes fresh from scratch. The traditional, I would say, foundation of our food, which would be the green seasoning and the hot pepper and the flavoring pepper and the garlic and the broadleaf thyme and the fine thyme. Those things always find their way into, and the ginger will always find their way into our cooking. It doesn't mean that everything that we do will have one type of seasoning, because I think you have to pull out the different notes and allow the food to sing on its own. Otherwise, everything tastes the same. But in terms of healthy approach, that's the kind of style that we do use. And so you do a lot of roasting and other things. You look at the cooking techniques that can bring out the flavors, the concentrated flavors of the different items that you're using.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I loved it that you said, and you're helping these flavors to sing, which is a lovely metaphor. So singing food. Debra, I want to thank you so much. You know, these are short little talks, but I always like to give people the last word. So if you would like to say anything to our audience about food and your journey in food, I would love to hear it, and I'm sure they would too.
I would just like to close off by saying, well, first of all, thank you for allowing me to have this conversation with you. I'd also like to say that our cuisine, I've always said this, and bar none, is so layered and it produces such a wonderful array of colors and flavors and vibes. And it's something that we all need to be proud of, because our grandmothers brought it to the forefront, and now we have the responsibility of taking it to the next level.
Thank you so much. I think we will work on trying to do that. Okay, so thank you, Chef Debra Sardinha. We look forward to talking to you again soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.